Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on Brazilian e-commerce and payouts. My name is Abe Delegado. I'm the Digital Marketing Director for America's Market Intelligence, and I'm going to be serving as the moderator for today. So before we get started, we just want to give you a quick understanding of what to expect in today's webinar. We're going to put about 50 minutes into the presentation itself and about 10 minutes for questions and answers to take up the entire hour that we have allotted for today's webinar. Now, you don't have to wait until the end of the webinar to ask us questions. You can ask us questions at any point in time. The way you would do that is if you look on your screen to see a series of icons, your participant panel there, and you'll see one that says Q&A, an icon that says Q&A. If you click on that, it will bring up a window, and you can type in your question into the window and send to us at any point in time. So as you hear an interesting fact or something you want to learn more about, by all means, send us the questions. We'll take a look at all of them towards the end of the webinar and try to answer as many of them as we possibly can. One question that we always get in our webinars is, are the materials going to be available after? So I want to answer that now up front. And yes, the answer is yes. What we usually do is within 24 to 48 hours, we send out to all of the webinar attendees a video and the presentation deck that we're going to be seeing here today during the actual webinar itself. All right, so let's move on to the next phase here to talk a little bit more about the agenda for today's webinar. So to give it, I'm not going to read it all off there because there's a lot to read, but basically what we're going to do is get into the methodology of the study that's powering the data that we're sharing in today's webinar. And we're going to talk about specific aspects of that study data that we have accumulated here. A lot of the things that have to do with digitization, the payment methods, the role of PIX, the regulatory landscape today. And then we're also going to talk about payouts in Brazil and how that's changed as well, and what are the trends to follow in that area as well. So that's going to be basically the thrust of what we're going to be talking about in today's webinar. Now I'm going to take us over to our introductions. And so the speaker panel is going to come up in a second here. They're going to each introduce themselves one by one, and then we'll take it from there and get started with the webinar.
Thank you, Abel. Hello, everyone. Great to be here with you. My name is Lindsay Lear. I lead the payments practice at AMI, and we're very happy to have partnered with BoaCompra to bring you this webinar. We're going to be doing a deep dive into Brazil, very exciting market, as many of you already know. So thank you for being with us. I'd like Karina from BoaCompra to say hello, and then we'll get on with our content.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, it looks like Karina might have had some connection issues. Let's go to Marina, and then we'll see if Karina can rejoin us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Lindsay. And while Karina is reconnecting, I'm glad to say hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Marina Gil. I am the Brazilian Payments Practice Affiliate, and I'm delighted to be here. I hope this will be a really insightful and with really interesting information for all of you. As Abel mentioned, please send us your questions. We'll do our best to reply everything at the end where we have our Q&A session, right? Since Karina is not here, Abel, I think we can keep going on, and as soon as she can connect back, she'll come back, right? So just giving you an overview of this webinar. This is based on a recently published white paper we developed in partnership with BoaCompra, which is really a deep dive in Brazil as the main focus in this paper about e-commerce and payouts, what happened during COVID and what we expect to keep happening in the next years, right? Also, I would like to share with you that this is not the only thing we are going to share with you this year, because we are about to launch the other white paper and also another webinar still this year about Latin America e-commerce as a whole. So you can expect more from us, and hope it will also be helpful for all merchants, especially people from international markets willing to join Latin America. Yeah, Karina is back. Karina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Karina Farina, Head of Marketing of BoaCompra. BoaCompra is a cross-border payment company that enables international merchants to easily offer local payment methods in Latin America. In name of BoaCompra, I would like to say that we are delighted to share this valuable content with you. We hope you enjoy it. So let's get started.
Great, thank you, Karina. So Abel, if you could go to the next slide. The idea here is just to provide really background on our environment, but the truth is it's nothing new for anyone here that COVID really shifted our lives into the digital world, right? And As an example, we have like 77% of the Brazilians making purchases online. So Brazilians change the way we buy, like the channels we buy, and also the way we pay. And this is something we're going to further explore, right? Brazilian e-commerce market is more than half of the Latin America region as a whole, right? Something that is really interesting in this change is that we changed not only how we buy and pay, but also how we live, how we work, how we interact with people, how we socialize, right? And this brought to light a group of workers that we needed to pay attention, which is the gig economy. Example, drivers, Uber driver, 99 drivers, app delivery agents, freelancers, people that are like translators, yoga teachers, any working for platforms, and also the social media influencers, that this group played really an important role throughout the isolation and quarantine, supporting people that were working in homes. And this also highlighted the need of better solutions for them to be paid, because most of them work for international companies. So this is something that we're going to further explore to show you how the companies also had to evolve to this new world, digital world, right? And some key insights we want to share since the beginning is like, as we change, companies need to provide online purchase channels. Not all companies had that prior. Online payment methods. And not only the basics, because consumers now, they are more demanding. They want a seamless customer experience. This is something that really matters. And on top of everything, the security, because we know Brazilians and Latin America as a whole, but Brazilians also really worried about security. And this, like the security, the risk of fraud was one of the main barriers, entrance barriers for e-commerce in Brazil, right? So this is like the overall, and going to the next slide about, I would like to share with you a bit of a poll question to engage the audience and for us to get to know you better, right? So the idea is to know here, you can vote all these options. In which of the vertical do you work? Is it gaming, retail, digital goods, travel, or other? I'll give you some moment to respond here, and then we'll come back. Karina, I'm just trying to think here when you get a chance about BoaCompra. I know like the solutions are available for all segments, but is BoaCompra focusing in one specific? What you can share with us about that? I guess Karina froze again. So sorry, guys. So
realities of live TV.
Exactly. we are doing online streaming. So okay, Karina, do you want to share with us about the verticals? So I think it would be better, Belle, if you have the response. I can tell you that BoaCompra Solutions is for all segments, but they are really specialized in the leader in gaming segment, right? But yeah, I'm seeing here we have 4% of the audience in gaming, 30% retail, 6% digital goods, 4% travel, and the majority, like 73%, is others. So I'm a bit curious here if you want to share with us in the chat which segments you are in, so we can get to know you better and maybe address specific concerns. More than glad to go through that after, okay? Perfect. So now that we started, Abel, let's go to e-commerce and start this deep dive. Sorry, I forgot that I want to show you how we reached all these findings. So just sharing briefly the methodology of this study, right? It is pretty recent. We did this study in March and April 2021, and mostly we based in 3 methodology. One is an extensive desk research on available public sources of those topics. We also, AMI, we have an e-commerce proprietary analysis data that is back to 2016, and it covers 15 markets in the region. So we also leverage on that. And mainly the in-depth interviews. We did several in-depth interviews with several players, local and cross-border merchants to understand their needs, local payment processors, cross-border payment enablers to understand, and as well the freelancers, online freelancer platform, online teaching platforms, and all kinds of industries to really get a sense of how this environment is changing, okay? So now let's finally start the e-commerce data. Abel, if you could go to the other slide. This is just the index, the other one. Okay, so as we started mention, COVID played an important role in the digitization of the society and the economy, right? Here in Brazil especially, we faced a really interesting movement from the central bank by the means they chose to pay the subsidies related to COVID, all via online digital accounts. So this kind of forced the population to apply online and to open this digital account at Caixa Econômica, which is a public owned bank that developed everything to pay the subsidy as the main paying agent, right? And this brought millions of new users to the system, not only to the financial banking system, but also to the digitization banking system, right? Which is like two big movements. We also had important players and partnerships happen. For example, PagBank, which is part of BoaCompra's group, they also partnered with the government of Minas Gerais to pay one estadual incentive for meals for students. And the same happened with PicPay partnering with the government of São Paulo, right? This also movement was leveraged by the neobanks to have important players, Nubank, Banco Original, we have Neon, C6, all those banks, Recarga Pay and wallets, they really provided incentives and supported the population in using these channels. And the traditional banks, as Caixa, they followed this movement and really improved all the digital channels they had, right? Even not only for monitoring, but also to affect and acquire products online. And this is the biggest change, right? This shows that we have currently 80% in banking penetration in Brazil. This means that 80% of the Brazilian adults, they have accounts either in a traditional bank or a wallet or a neobank, right? It's really a huge increase from the last number available in the World Bank report 2017, right? Something that also calls attention is how the Brazilians are prepared in terms of technology and access. 90% of the Brazilians has a smartphone, and also the internet penetration is beyond 90% in the country. So this all together with the COVID and all the movement, this shows how the market has a potential and how the consumers are ready for this movement or to keep in this path of digitization, right? Abel, if you go to the other slide, please. Great. Here is just to give you an idea of the size of this market. Although Brazilian GDP declined about 4% last year, we saw e-commerce overall growing 7%. And you may ask me, wow, only 7%. Yes, it seems low, but the thing is, this is mostly guided by the really drop the travel industry had, around 60% decline in reduction due to all the circumstances you're already familiar, right? The really interesting part of this slide, though, is to show you how digital goods increased and even surpassed retailers at e-commerce. So we have a market we had in 2020 of $111 billion. And this is really a big market per se. And I'm gonna tell in a minute how we predict that to keep growing, right? One thing I wanted to show is like 7% for e-commerce, and brick and mortar retailers declined more than 20%, like physical stores. And we also have an interesting fact that is domestic e-commerce grew, but cross-border e-commerce declined a bit, more than around 30% in this year. And also travel pushes this, but as Karina is expert in cross-border, I would like to hear your thoughts on that and how you see the recovery from this cross-border e-commerce in the next years, Karina.
So we have seen an increasing number of international companies expanding to Brazil in the past few years, which is a great for us. But still, we only represent 6.5% of this huge market, which lead us to many opportunities for international companies to succeed in Brazil. In terms of industry, digital good is the most representative with 10% of the market. It's still many chances and opportunities for all those merchants.
Great. Abel, if you go to the next slide, since I already showed 2020, in the next slide, I wanna show you what we expect to see. And this is really impressive. We are expecting to see a year-over-year growth of 30%, around 30% up to 2024, leading us to a market of around $322 billion at this year. And this is a huge market. You know, no matter which segment you are in, you have an opportunity because it's a huge market. I just want to catch your brain again, Karina, really quickly about, we know the trend is to keep growing, but is there any specific on channels, for example, desktop, mobile, or payment, something that is really different here in Brazil and you want to tell us?
I could share that Brazil, it's definitely a mobile first country. Most of people have experienced their first purchase through a mobile device. So mobile plays a huge an important role in online purchases. Last year, mobile has overcome desktop transactions and now represents 57% of the market, which it's an incredible volume. So I could say that for BoaCompra merchants, some of them reaches up to 70% of mobile transactions. So it's key to have a very smooth and improving UX for succeed in this market when you think about mobile.
And Karina, just to make sure here, when we mention mobile, this includes like the website in the mobile and also the app. Is there a differentiation or a must-have? How you see that?
There's no need to have an app. People are pretty used to do purchases through browsers, but of course, apps can bring more loyalty to the end customers. But for a company to start in Brazil, they can start with a very good mobile browser experience, and then if they decided to get closer to the end customer, go to an app experience.
No, that makes total sense. So it's not a need for an app. You can try the market if you are able to provide a really seamless and smooth experience. Great.
Yeah,
no, good to know. Good to know that's an open market, and also like not that complex to enter if you don't need to develop everything at first. Great. And Lindsay, I just want to invite you to share your thoughts here about these numbers, because, you know, you were the brain on all of that. And then especially if you could guide us through the trends in the next years by segment, so we can try to tackle everyone in the audience point here.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. So, 30% growth is a big jump up from 7% the year before. We get a lot of questions about how is this working? What's driving this growth? And this is a trend we saw across Latin America, not just in Brazil. We saw lower than average growth last year as people were shell-shocked with the pandemic, reducing their spending overall, travel completely deteriorating. And this year in 2021, the big question has been, will people continue to buy online even once brick and mortar stores are open? And across the board in Brazil and other markets, the answer is a resounding yes. People have learned to shop online. They've learned to shop in new categories online and really become loyal to the online channel. The payment methods are working. Logistics are working, the experience is positive. And so now that people feel a little bit more certain about their economic outlook, things are slightly back to normal, we're seeing growth really explode. And we'll go through each of the kind of verticals to look at why exactly is this growing so aggressively in Brazil. So on the next slide, in the retail category, retail is a monster in Brazil, and there's several trends driving this growth. We mentioned overall increase in digitization in Brazil. Brazil's the most digitized country in Latin America, but still there's a customer segment who has been outside of this economy up until now. And so we have about 6 million new e-commerce shoppers in 2021. And the first thing you buy online, in many cases, is a retail product. Just to test it out, to make sure everything works, low ticket, something that you might, a cell phone case, or just something basic to kind of test out e-commerce. So this is where we're getting a lot of growth coming from newly digitized consumers. The other trend that we're seeing is a massive ramping up of marketplaces. We have a few as you very well may know, some very powerful, very big local domestic marketplaces, as well as international marketplaces, really committing to the Brazilian economy because of its size, because of its growth, because of the interest of Brazilians in e-commerce. Global marketplaces are seeing terrific success. And this is for a couple of reasons. International merchants, despite exchange rate challenges, tend to have lower prices on the international market than we see locally in Brazil. And so in times of economic crunch, Brazilians are looking for the best price. And so international merchants can often undercut local suppliers. And then the other thing is the diversity and the range and variety of products available internationally. So we have, merchants that act as kind of department stores or marketplaces offering a huge variety of products are consolidating their place in the market. Here we can see just some of the top categories that were scored the highest in 2020 and continuing into 2021 so far this year. As you can see, still a lot of categories oriented around staying at home, making your home comfortable, keep staying in shape. Still, groceries and pharmacies is still an emerging and growing category. And then the final thing I'll mention is that in Brazil is ahead of the rest of the region in the influencer economy. And we're going to talk about streaming and digital goods in a moment, but shoppers are interacting with brands in new ways, and merchants are becoming really creative about how to compete in this market through live influencers, young people who sponsor a brand or sponsor a product and want have a following to try to get them into the product, and also digital avatar type bots who are getting followers and promoting brands and promoting different products. So it's important, as much as your payment strategy is in Brazil, your marketing strategy and engaging with consumers. Brazil really pushes the envelope in terms of innovation. And so we want to be thinking about, how do I connect with Brazilian consumers? When we think about travel, on the next slide, travel, we get a lot of questions. When will travel recover? It was all completely decimated last year. And the question, the answer is, we're not sure that it will ever fully recover. The reason being that corporate travel, we have all gotten very used to interacting online. We've seen that deals can be closed online, meetings can be held online pretty successfully. So corporate travel may not ever fully recover. However, domestic travel and leisure travel have already started to rebound. So, when we talk to industry players, typically they say 2021 is still below 2019 levels, possibly achieving 2019 levels next year in leisure travel. And then corporate is really a question if it will ever fully come back. But in Brazil, Brazilians are, a couple of trends have come out of this downward pressure on travel, people seeking out more remote areas. And of course, Brazil has many beautiful places to visit that are outside of main cities. Looking more towards alternative accommodations, houses with more space and as opposed to hotels. And we are starting to see cross-border travel rebound as borders open up. Throughout the year, we're seeing Europe become available. Brazilians can travel to Europe, other countries in South America. And so this is going to continue to ramp up through the end of the year and start refueling cross-border travel. Okay. And then if we go into digital goods, of course, this is a super diverse category and possibly the most exciting because it has very many niche areas. Of course, ride hailing, delivery apps, we've been talking about for a few years now. Delivery apps saw explosive growth as, people needed to order and to their homes. And this is a trend that we're continuing to see. But what is special about Brazil is the very exciting gaming and streaming markets. As Marina mentioned, BoaCompra has a very specific niche in this area. And Karina, I'm going to ask you to comment in a moment, but I wanted to share with you, the trend we're seeing in Brazil is that gaming, is becoming more professional, more sophisticated, more niche, and really attracting brands of all kinds for sponsorship, to supply gamers. The other day, just to share an anecdote with you all, the other day I was contacted by a company in Singapore that creates ergonomic gaming chairs. And were interested in entering the Brazilian market because of the massive growth of gaming and this trend that they're seeing. And so out of all, their global expansion, Brazil was number one on their list because of this growing gaming industry. So Karina, what can you tell us, from your merchants, from your experience, what are you observing in this niche?
So Brazil is a digital paradise. This accelerated digitalization and COVID helped Brazil to achieve incredible numbers. So in online gaming, we have around 95 million gamers. And the curious fact is that the majority is women playing. They are casual gamers playing from mobile games. That a mobile game play an important role here, as mobile gaming is skyrocketing in Brazil. So esports, it's tremendous and mature, exporting professional players to major championships worldwide. The revenue last year reached 1.56 billion. So it's a serious job that has been done in Brazil, and the gaming market is very mature. And when we talk about streaming, we need to mention that Brazil is the second country with most Netflix subscribers, or the number that recently platforms reached in a very short period of time, their goals for subscribers. So Brazilians are ready to explore more digital things, and they are natural digital consumers for sure.
Karina, just a quick question that just came in through the chat. I don't know if you have insight into this. If you don't, it's okay. But what are the age ranges that have changed, that have been most impactful of the behavioral change we've seen?
There was a mistaken about believing that only very young people were playing games, but this is not true. We can consider that the range that plays the most and consume the most gaming are from 20 to 49, and then above 49 means like a 20% of the market. And it's curious to see that during COVID time, families were playing together. So there's not only very young or children playing games, but everyone found in the gaming atmosphere or streaming atmosphere a way to entertain themselves. So it's a broad range with a concentration of the range of people that consumes the most.
That's interesting. It's nice to see. It's interesting to see that gaming has become more and more diverse, right? You have kids, you have young women, as you said, leisurely playing on mobile. Then you have people with these very professional setups. So there's something for everyone, right? And so meaning there's a merchant out there for everyone.
Exactly. There's opportunity to create products for all range of ages, genders, and everybody wants to get some entertainment. So there's multiple opportunities for this.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. So if we go on to the next one. Okay, so talking about payment methods a little bit here. As we talked about verticals in the industries, and I'm guessing very few of you are in any of those specific industries. Many of you, I'm guessing, are in payments. So, you'll be very attuned into this conversation about payment methods. And, when we're talking with international players who don't know Latin America so well, there are a lot of questions about what payment methods do people use to shop online, to pay online. In developed economies, it's really essentially credit card. But as all of you who may or may not know Latin America, who know Latin America, we know that alternative payment methods are critical to engaging the Brazilian and Latin American consumer. So when we look at the breakdown of payment methods, when we consider this $111 billion market, how is this breaking down? We have some interesting insights to share. So credit card in Brazil is the #1 payment method, as it is in most countries in the world. But what's interesting to note about Brazil is that in only a small portion of credit cards issued in Brazil are actually enabled for international use. Meaning, if I'm an average Brazilian with a typical credit card, most likely my credit card has not been enabled to shop online internationally by my issuing bank. So we have local credit card networks such as Elo, such as Hiper, that only function in Brazil, are only available for domestic. We also have international brands, Visa and MasterCard cards, which are really can only be used in Brazil. This is a little known fact among people outside of Brazil. And what that means is that if you are trying to go to Brazil with an offshore acquiring strategy, you're only going to access about 20% of credit cards in Brazil. So having a connection to local acquirers is really important to access this full market, this full $71 billion in 2020 of credit cards. And beyond credit cards, only about 1/3 of Brazilians have access to a credit card. This has improved and continues to improve, but the majority of Brazilians are depending on other types of payment methods. Debit cards have a small share in Brazil, not being supported or enabled for e-commerce from the issuing banks. And so this means that people are pushed to other types of payment methods. Boleto bancário, if you're not familiar, is a voucher issued by a bank, which is a very common payment method in Brazil and frequently used online for e-commerce. You can either print out a boleto and pay for it in cash at a bank or a supermarket, or you can pay it online through your online banking. And it's not such a seamless user experience, but it's impressive how favorable, how important boleto has been up until now. In the pandemic, we saw boleto acceleration decline, but is still the main payment method available for Brazilians who don't have a bank account, or for people who feel uncomfortable putting in their payment information on the internet, which is still prevalent. We're going to talk about Pix in a moment. But of course, Pix is a very hot topic in Brazil in the past year. Pix is going to fall under this bank transfer category, and we're going to have Marina and Karina talk about Pix in a moment. But we can see here the very impressive growth we expect bank transfers to have in a couple of years for e-commerce. This is driven mostly by Pix. So this is just to give the landscape of payment methods. And if we go to the next slide, we'll look at the growth here. So today, we have credit cards. Credit cards will continue to be dominant, right? Credit cards are very important, especially for higher ticket purchases. And credit cards are the payment method that many people feel most comfortable with. They're used to it. So we'll continue to see cards being dominant in the next few years. Boleto, as I mentioned, because of the pressures of the pandemic, it's not as easy to go to the store and pay for something in cash, as well as the overall digitization and improvement in user experience in e-commerce. Boleto is still growing, but its share will decline because it's going to grow slower than the market average as people move to other types of payment methods, specifically Pix. Here we can see today, keep in mind, Pix has not even been active for a full year, but more than 50% of Brazilians are already using Pix. Today, it has a low share in e-commerce, but again, it's only been around for about 10 months, and it has really been driven as a P2P payment method. It is starting to slowly become integrated as an e-commerce payment method. And Karina is going to tell us a little bit about BoaCompra's experience with Pix. But the important thing to note here is that we expect over 100% growth year after year through 2024, with the most explosive growth this year in 2021. But, we expect Pix to take more than 10% of the market in the next 3 years, which is really remarkable for a new payment method just coming into the market. So on the next slide, I want to invite Marina to kind of give us landscape of Pix in Brazil, and then Karina will tell us a little bit about their experience with Pix.
Sure. Thank you, Lindsay. And yes, I mean, as Brazilian, it's been really interesting and exciting to be able, to see how Pix is evolving and to use that, because it's really, really a much better client and consumer experience, right? So as Lindsay mentioned, the thing about Pix is if you go to the number of transactions, it's still P2P transactions are dominant, more than 70%. But we see month over month in the Banco Central Bank's report, the increasing in the use for P2B and B2B. If you go to volumes of transactions in reais, let's say, B2B business portion is higher because of the tickets, right, of the transactions. But one thing that is really interesting that Lindsay already mentioned, and I will ask Karina in a moment, is not all merchants accepted Pix since the beginning. It was like evolving. Merchants started like by slowly accepting Pix. Now we already have some important groups accepting Pix, as Magazine Luiza here in Brazil, Uber, Mercado Livre, Mercado Pago, AliExpress as well, Lojas Americanas, which are like one of the main marketplaces we have here, right? And based on that, what we see is, like, as Lindsay mentioned, Pix will be the fastest growing payment method, more than 100% year over year, but it also has a huge potential to replace Boleto, or some players also mentioned maybe reduce it to really the unbanked population that really will keep using Boleto, but will be really an aggressive movement of Pix over Boletos. And what we see in the latest numbers since May, the number of Pix transactions already surpassed the number of Boleto transactions, not only in commerce, but overall. It's a good indicator of the trend, right? Karina will tell you a bit more, but what I can anticipate is, like, for the merchants already accepting Pix, it's already the second payment method most used to pay in their sites, right? And also it reaches up to a quarter of the volumes of the sales being paid with Pix. This is really a massive disruption, and something that grew really fast because these players started to accept Pix like a few months ago, not since November 19 when Pix was launched, right? So Karina, it would be really interesting if you could share how you see and what you've been noticing about the evolution of Pix within your merchants.
So we are definitely living a payment revolution in Brazil. Every time I look on Pix numbers, I get like a wow feeling, because of course part is a cannibalization of other payment methods, but part is from the amazing growth that they are having month over month. So even though Pix is not active in 100% of our merchants, as you mentioned before, it happens slowly for most of the merchants to implement Pix, to understand the importance. We already have 30% of our TPV coming from Pix transactions, and for us is the second most important payment method. I can see that Brazilians understood the easiness and the benefits from paying with Pix in e-commerces, and the more merchants offer Pix as a payment method, the more people start to shift to this type of method to be easier for them to pay in a transaction. So it's key to have Pix in your e-commerce if you want to succeed nowadays.
Karina, that's pretty impressive. You know, Pix already representing 30% of volume. Can you share, do you notice any trends or patterns with the types of merchants where Pix is particularly successful?
I can share from our perspective, as we are leading a company for online games and digital goods. So I think that there's a relation also from the age of people that adopt Pix as a payment method, not only for transfer person to person, but to also a person to business. So online gaming, the age of people that consumes gaming with the age of people that uses Pix is pretty related, very similar. So we can see that this shift in online gaming to prefer Pix as a payment method from the 20s to the 45, 50s, it's the most that we could see in our transactions nowadays. And I can tell you that most merchants have implemented Pix recently, as Marina mentioned. There's some that in the past 2 months, 3 months, and it was skyrocketing. We can go from 0 to 18% in 1 month share. So it's quite impressive.
So that really speaks to how easy Pix is to use, and just the demands, that it's solving some pain point, solving something that people are causing to choose Pix over other payment methods. Really, really impressive. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, talking to the merchants in the interviews that we mentioned, we made boleros. I mean, Pix is really fundamental for the people without credit card at first, right? We know that it's also getting some share of credit cards, but for the ones without card, Pix is really a revolution, because boleto, for someone who has to pay, it's hard because you have to go there, it's a barcode, but also for the merchants, from their perspective, the things they are really willing to allow Pix, because all the problem they had when you select to pay via boleto, they have to block the storage, the goods, or especially for the retailers, the inventory. And then if the boleto is not paid, they could have lost this sale, right? And the rate of non-payment of boleto they shared, it's around 50%. It's really aggressive. So it's really a barrier for the merchants, and it will really relieve a huge pain related to the logistics of the e-commerce as well, right?
Yeah, I could also add here that Pix is all increasing conversion rates, as we don't have this abandon. It's smooth, it's easy to pay. So people tend to complete their purchases when choosing Pix.
Karina, I want to ask you, because there's a very relevant question here that I think you can answer, and it really goes to the very essence of our webinar here. Is someone is asking, can an international e-commerce company apply for Pix? And if yes, what is the cross-border settlement like?
An international company needs to have a local partner to offer this cross-border payment processing for them. So it will be the same settlement as they choose credit card companies without a local entity or local presence. So it will be the same settlement for any other group of payment methods, but they need to have a local partner to do it. So a company without a local presence need a local partner to do it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Exactly. So let's go to the other slide, just a brief overview of the regulatory landscape here in Brazil. And the idea of this slide is just to show you that on top of the consumers' readiness, the market readiness, merchants, innovation, we also have a central bank that is really innovative and it's really working to modernize and to provide a better environment and competitive landscape here in Brazil. On top of Pix, we also have open banking, upcoming open finance, and LGPD, which is the data protection law for consumers' data. So all together, this is aiming to give a better environment for everyone to participate. Central bank allowing Pix indirect participants, also opened room for fintechs and other players, not only financial institutions, to join the system. So it's really being a transparent and really trying to guarantee the competition and not allowing the market to go into a really monopoly. So the central bank is really enlarging the market reach and supporting, also providing security and protection to the consumers. So they are really playing an interesting role here as this innovative central bank. And if I'm not wrong, the other really innovative central bank we have nearby us is Costa Rica. So it's really a differential when we compare to the other central banks and how the regulators play a role in this innovation and disruption for digitization of the market, right? And then just to finish the e-commerce and go to payouts, Abel, in the next slide, we want to share what would be our recommendation for international players willing to come to Brazil. Lindsay, do you want to start with your?
Yeah, right. So, those of you who are international merchants looking to go to Brazil, the important thing is to have a look and feel as close as possible to a local Brazilian merchant. Okay. And this is not difficult to do when you have the right partnerships in place. Thinking about the trends in retail, travel, and digital goods that we already covered, what is the Brazilian consumer looking for? what segments are growing, and how can I find my niche in this market? As we said, this is a huge market, very fragmented, lots of opportunities for merchants of all kinds. So following the trends we discussed, and aiming to look and feel like a Brazilian merchant as much as possible with payment methods, with local language, offering, and one thing we haven't mentioned so far is offering installments, which can only be available through a local payment partner. Installments meaning enabling your customer to, at the point of sale, check out and decide how many payments they would like to make this purchase. It's very common for merchants to offer interest-free payments in 3, 6, 12, 18-month payments. So this is a very critical portion of Brazilian e-commerce. And then again, one thing that is very easily missed is really important to make sure you're enabling those local credit cards, because if not, you're going to sacrifice 80% of that credit card market in e-commerce.
Oh, great. So yes, this is like ending and closing the e-commerce recommendations, as Lindsay said. One thing that is really important, like this, be local, at least look like local in terms of language as well, because you have e-commerce people, Brazilians need to be able to access it and know what they're buying, do searches. So it's the full local presence that you can do it, either becoming a local entity, which is a complex process, or choosing the right partners to do that, right? So Abel, to close this session of the e-commerce session, I would like to make another poll question. And for you guys in the audience, we would like to know, like, how the pandemic impacted your business. It was like a massive growth, about the same levels, no change, reductions, or considerable reduction. We know segments and verticals, they reacted in different ways. So just to see how it was for you guys. And Karina, if you could share what you have seen, like how it was for BoaCompra. What happened in 2020 during the massive pandemic and isolation?
I could say that luckily we could enjoy the extraordinary moment our merchants are living. So I know that it's a very sad moment for COVID, but the positive thing is our business wouldn't affect. The opposite, when we grow a lot, not only our merchants, but ourselves.
Great, yeah. Abel, do we have the answers? Because this is the interesting part of COVID. Nobody is able to see like one positive effect, but some verticals and some companies could see that. Not that it's relieving all other pain that everyone suffered, but yeah, here it's amazing because you have 30% saying that it was a massive growth, 40% growth, 13% about the same levels, 13% reduction, and 5% considerable reduction. I think it's because of when we got mostly others, and payments industry also faced a good trend, like to being able to address all the innovations that we saw in the market, right? Cool. And now, like to go to the second part of the webinar, Lindsay, I would like you to guide us through the payouts, like this exciting portion of the industry.
All right, so payouts. Let's go right ahead into our next slide. What is a payout, right? First of all, we need to define what we're talking about. Payouts is a term that's thrown around a lot. It's almost like the other side of e-commerce. We have the pay-ins where consumers are making purchases. And then these platforms, marketplaces, gig economies, influencer platforms, they have to pay out money to the contributors on their site, whether it's sellers on a marketplace, whether it's gig economy agents, whether it's influencers and contributors. They have to make a payment to their contributors. So this is what a payout refers to, or a disbursement. And what I think gets very little attention is the importance in differentiating between a local payout, which we can call, which in this, we refer to as a local split payment, and a cross-border payout. And the difference here is that if you are a local entity in Brazil, you're collecting pay-ins from local consumers. You have a bank account sitting in Brazil that you can draw off of to now pay your collaborators. You don't have to deal with exchange rates. You don't have to deal with foreign transaction fees. You already have those resources locally in Brazil. And so that transaction is simpler for you. Now, if you're a cross-border marketplace or a cross-border influencer, platform, streaming platform, you don't have that capability to take Brazilian reais that you've earned in the country and then pay local Brazilians. And so this is a solution. This is a pain point that international marketplaces and platforms have that you can. A little known fact is that this can be solved through a connection with a company like BoaCompra or other payment partners. So, Karina, can you elaborate on this a little bit and tell us about how your solution solves for this pain point?
Sure. When we decided to develop our cross-border payout solution, we identified many pain points that international companies without local presence were facing when they tried to pay their pay. So it was a really challenging payout process for those companies. So we understood that there was a need of bring a solution with a seamless process, with an optimized payout flow. And this is what we did. We tried to avoid all the complexity from the FX, the exchanges, the offering the local currency and the instant payment methods to bring a new experience, not only from the merchant, but from the payee side that was having always trouble to understand how they could receive the money from the work they did.
Perfect. Okay, that's clear. Thank you. If we go on to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the trends here, because the payout industry follows the e-commerce industry, right? We talked about gamers, we talked about streamers, we talked about the rise of the gig economy. And as you have this increase in the consumer demand for these platforms, at the same time, and a little bit behind the scenes, you have increasing demand for payouts, because it's a balance. You can't, in a marketplace or platform economy, you cannot have pay-ins with payouts. They depend on each other. So as these markets grow, payouts become increasingly important, increasingly strategic, and essential to an effective e-commerce ecosystem. And so here we have some more impressive numbers. We have an estimated, 12 million Brazilians are already receiving mass disbursements, with 60% of these being cross-border, coming from cross-border companies. And this is driven really powerfully by freelancer, influencers, streaming, and gaming platforms. We have the ride hailing and the delivery apps, which are top of mind and are certainly important. But what gets a little bit less press are these platforms, TikTok, Shola, Twitch, where we have millions of contributors receiving small, low-ticket payouts on a very recurring, frequent basis. And so this is a segment of the industry that is new, that is growing, and that hasn't gotten so much attention. But we can point out that this represents a huge opportunity for international companies to arrive in Brazil, attract pay-ins, and make payouts very seamlessly. Okay, if we go to the next slide. Again, some other trends that I want to comment on. We have the ride hailing and travel apps that we mentioned, Airbnb and other platforms really being important in travel as consumers are preferring alternative accommodations to hotels during the pandemic. Gig economy and freelancer, of course, iFood, Rappi, these platforms that operate locally and perform delivery to your home, experienced over 100% growth. So as did their payout segment. We also have contractor work platforms. As work has become increasingly decentralized, higher levels of employment, people pursuing contract work and entrepreneurism more, leveraging international platforms like Upwork, Workana, etc. And I want to ask Karina to tell us a little bit about streaming and gaming and what you're seeing on the payout side. In particular, you guys have a couple of great examples that we'd love to hear.
So I can share the very successful case we have with TikTok.
Okay, it looks like Karina is, let's see if she comes back. If not, I do really want to hear her anecdote, so we'll see if she can come back in a moment. Did you want to?
Lindsay, while we are waiting, Karina, I think it's a good insight from the interviews from the platforms, the freelancer platform, that they mentioned that the levels of requests for remote work and freelancers skyrocket, because prior to that, people had this feeling that remote work doesn't work. And now pandemic did all the marketing they needed. It's something that all the platforms mentioned. But Karina is back. Let's hear TikTok. This is interesting.
Okay, so TikTok had a massive growth of TikTok users and need a robust solution to handle their operation. So our solution could deliver a massive payout per second, instantly in their bank accounts without any banking fees and in local currency. And this is all through our digital bank PagBank. And all this experience create a seamless process, not only for the merchant to handle this, but also to the payee that didn't have to deal with any trouble within the process, just transferring the money from TikTok to their bank account, just few steps and the money was there. So it's very good to see that when we can disrupt this scenario and bring a very innovative solution, it helps all of the companies in these opportunities, as you mentioned, not only for social apps, but also for freelancers platforms. So it's soon we will release also payouts through Pix, which is another new payment method in Brazil that it's very demanding. So that's a very good case for us.
Terrific. TikTok is such a it's a bit of a mind-blowing type of phenomenon for us who are not in that age group, but it just goes to show how continually innovative brands need to be to capture up-and-coming generations, up-and-coming consumers, and be as current as possible. So thank you for sharing that, Karina.
Yeah, it's important to mention how instant people want to get paid as well. And when you think about a payout solution, you need to consider this in a pay perspective, because the traditional flow takes a lot of time, and changing this.
Yeah, just to finish up the thought there, as people become more accustomed to instant pay-ins, I'm paying you instantly, I want to get paid instantly as well. So this is going to be an increasingly competitive pressure that brands experience to speed up their payouts and guarantee a seamless user experience for their contributors. Did I sum it up okay, Karina? Okay, let's go on to the next slide. We want to finish up and get to some of your questions. And so I think we've discussed many of the challenges that we already see with cross-border payouts in Brazil, having to think about foreign currency fluctuation, intermediaries and fees, how long it takes to receive funds locally. It can take up to a week or more, depending on if it gets stuck in the Brazilian banking system, and how being able to pay out locally through a partner in real time can really give you a competitive advantage when you're trying to guarantee a good experience for contributors on your platforms.
Yeah, totally. And just to add, I guess, like both in the traditional flow, it's being hard for both the company doing the payout and for the payees. And this image is exactly how the payees feel, because you do not know when you're going to receive, how much you're going to receive. So this is completely a gray area. And as Karina mentioned, and Lindsay, for the young generation, this is not acceptable anymore. Even us and the elders, they are getting used to better solutions. So this is why we need to disrupt. And also from the interviews, a really interesting insight is one of the platforms, the marketplace, mentioned that if you want to have good people working or selling in your platform, you have to be able to pay them accordingly, because this is fundamental for people to keep working for you and willing to support you. Otherwise, they are going to try to find someone that can at least pay them in an appropriate way. So this is something interesting. Karina, do you have any comment or anything you want to share with us related to the payouts?
I think that we cover all. We can jump to the Q&A sessions.
Perfect. We just have another slide, Abel, if you could go to there, which is like the final recommendations as we did for the e-commerce and for payouts. I guess Lindsay and Karina already tackled everything. But what we really the message of the paper and this webinar regarding payout is like consolidated in this little chart here in the right. Because I mean, international companies need to look like a local company, right? And for that, you have the complex job to become a local entity, or you can select a really ready and with knowledge local partner to support you, right? And based on that, you will be able to address all these winning solutions recommendation, which is like really being flexible. And this flexible we haven't mentioned, but this is something that really appeared in the interviews. It's like the payees want to be able to select when they want to be paid, how often they want to be paid, the amount of the money they want to be paid per transaction, the ticket of the payment, and this is really something that should be addressed, and a local player could support you with that, right? And also something that we haven't mentioned, we mentioned about transparency, which is being able to see the complete flow and all the fees related to that, but also second level related to loyalty is being able to find partners that can support these payees, not only with the payment, but also with additional services, offering loans, insurances, even trainings. So this is also something like the local players are improving and going towards this direction to be able to do the payment, but also to get find a way to make this client stay with them and try loyalty and try to serve them better, right? So yeah, I guess that's it. I guess we covered all we intended. We have some minutes left. Let's go to the Q&A, Abel, and let's see how we can support the audience.
All right, sounds good. Let's take a look at a couple of the questions that we had. One of them is focused on Pix itself and the use of it by small and medium-sized businesses. If we foresee that Pix will be used by those businesses, and what kind of major issues could they face in terms of fees? Okay, I can start, and then of course the others can help. But I think this is where Pix has more room to increase. If you go to really small companies, we did some surveys, and for example, it really helped people that are, for example, selling like saloons, small centers that they were really needed for cash, or some of them need like to have the card machines. What we saw is like they will keep accepting cards, but the industry as a whole does not expect Pix charges or fees for the merchants to be higher than credit cards. It could be something to check about debit cards, but not for credit. And it's also something that really helps the really small business, more than the big ones, I tend to think. What is your opinion, Lindsay?
Yeah, Marina, you're talking about overall commerce, right? In-store acceptance, right?
Yeah, and I forgot to mention about e-commerce, of course, but I tend to think even small commerces are accepting Pix using their personal account. This is something that is happening a lot. Totally. Thanks for reminding me, Lindsay. But a lot of personal small business online, you can pay maybe using your account.
Yeah, I think it's a way, it's a financial inclusion play, right? You know, maybe you don't, as a small e-commerce site offering services online, you might start by talking with your customers via WhatsApp and accepting a Pix payment. And then as you mature and become more sophisticated, maybe you actually integrate Pix into your online store. And so now you're really accepting it online. Karina, what's your perspective from international players?
I think that international players want to count on knowledge from the local partners. So as soon as they are full of information about how Pix can benefit their business, they can decide to accept Pix or not in their e-commerces. But as we have shared the numbers and how Pix is important, most of those international companies has been activating Pix.
Yeah, and I think something to add, Karina, that it's connected to what you both mentioned is like it's not that feasible for a small company to put that as a payment method because of the technology that's needed. But local players are also starting to offer that to support these small players as well. right? For them not having to develop everything inside, but having a local player supporting and giving everything ready for them to accept, right?
But there's one interesting thing is a lot of small and medium business, international merchants mostly as well, they use e-commerce platforms. And for this, there's payment plugins that can serve them. And for we have Pix in our plugin for WooCommerce, Magento. So even those small companies can offer Pix.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. We have another question to shift gears into a different topic that's asking are there any other payment methods being used in Brazilian e-commerce that are related to the use of cryptocurrencies?
I can mention that just from a general perspective. Crypto is top of mind. It's a hugely hot topic right now, and everyone wants to know, should I be offering crypto or what are the options? Crypto has become, we're seeing billions of dollars in crypto being transacted in Latin America and Brazil in particular, but most of it is still from a speculative trading perspective. We're not yet seeing crypto being used as a means of exchange yet. However, there are a couple of use cases. We already see an Elo branded debit card attached to a wallet in which you can basically at the point of sale, transfer your crypto into fiat currency and make a purchase directly from your crypto wallet. We're starting from international platforms paying people in Latin America. We're starting to hear that there's demand to be paid via Coinbase or to be paid in cryptocurrency. So there are a couple of use cases that are starting to pop up, still in very early days. But what we're understanding is that every major brand needs to have a cryptocurrency strategy. And so something that we are starting to track and try to provide advice as much as possible. And Karina, I'm curious if you guys have delved into this and what demand you've heard from your merchants.
We don't accept crypto yet. And of course, this is a subject that comes all the time about all the regulatory things. And if one day we will be able to offer. So it's the answer, it's not, but it's a subject that we have been talking many times recently.
All right. Another question is more specific as to the detail, and it's asking whether a local partner would be considered to be a local payment gateway provider. So that might be a good distinction for the audience for us to make there. Because we had mentioned using a local partner at different points in time in the webinar itself. So they're trying to understand what that exactly means or what we mean by that.
Yes, exactly. What we're referring to is a partner that can essentially get you access to local payment infrastructure, connect you to local acquirers, connect you to local payment methods, so that you are now, even though if you're an international merchant, now through this integration, you're accepting payments locally. That's essentially what we mean. And BoaCompra offers this model. So is there anything else that you want to distinguish about that, Karina?
Sure. When you work with a local partner, you don't need to have a local entity. So this avoids all the bureaucracies and complex of taxations, regulations, and etc. So this local partner handles all this process, this money flow for you. So this is one of the benefits of having a local partner without having to establish your business here.
All right, excellent. There's another question here that has to do sort of with comparison. So it's asking if anyone has developed something similar to what Alipay did in China, which is a clearinghouse for payments for online transactions. It's kind of a technical question, but it might be interesting and germane to what we're discussing today.
Yeah, that's a unique case. A lot of people ask, what will be the Alipay of Latin America? And, we can't quite compare because China has such a particular environment. But what we do see in Brazil are ecosystems. Ecosystems, there are many to name, in which you have an account and you can store money in that ecosystem and then you can make payments. The difference in Brazil is that, Alipay is really essentially a closed loop ecosystem that really gives you one option, whereas ecosystems in Brazil tend to have more of a multi-rail strategy. So, enabling the closed loop payments, enabling card payments, enabling PIX, which is by nature interoperable. PagBank is one example. So Karina, if you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, we have a super app with PagBank in which we can offer all the services within the app, which is pretty similar with the Alipay experience. I think that this is creates loyalty. It makes easier for the account holder to have everything in one app, from the account, the account balance, to buying on Magazine Luiza, for instance, or any other e-commerce. So it's easier for them to do this with only one single.
Terrific.
Okay, well, I think we're quite a bit over on time. We're about 10 minutes over on time. So I think we're going to have to, unfortunately, sign off for now, because I think everyone else has other things to get to, and so do we. So thank you so much for having attended. We hope that we answered the majority of your questions. We think we have, and hopefully the presentation and the video that we send will also further help in improving your understanding of Brazilian e-commerce. So we want to sign off for now. Thank you very much for attending, and we hope that you can join us again in the future. Have a great day.